Hello everyone, my name is Marco Landry and today I'm going to be documenting the process of installing some TST Captive Chain Tensioner on my Yamaha R3. If you ever had to change the rear wheel on your R3, you know it's not a complex process, it's a frustrating process because the end cap for the chain tensioner keeps falling back down and your spacers for the wheels fall down as well, and your bracket for the rear caliper also keeps falling down. So when you're trying to change the wheel, it's super annoying and super frustrating because nothing stays in place and you can't just push the wheel in and be done with it. You have to hold everything in place and it's painful. So the goal of installing this captive chain tensioner is to decrease the complexity or the frustration when you reinstall the rear wheel on your R3. So if that's something of interest, stay right there and we'll get started right now. As I mentioned in the intro, I will be installing the captive chain adjusters on my Yamaha R3. And this is very similar to what's in place now. The only difference, if I open this here, the only difference will be that this piece here will stay in place when you put it on the back of the swing arm. On top of this, this unit comes with the GP lifters as well. So the GP lifter will attach to this bracket. It will also attach where your spools are normally installed. On top of this, I've also purchased from TST these Delrin sliders that will sit on top of the GP lifters. So if there's ever a crash, this part will protrude a little bit more and will offer a sliding surface so that the damage is going to be hopefully on this piece of Delrin plastic as opposed to the swing arm. So that's why I've purchased this. It's debatable whether or not it's going to make a big difference, but I'd rather put all the chances on my side and minimize the damages on the bike if I ever have a low side or an incident of some sort. So this is my new bike here, and this is a 2018 Yamaha R3, and I already have one of them that I've modified and it's ready for the track. I'm redoing the same thing on this one, and I have these really bad bike stains now that I'm using just because I don't have the GP lifter, and my new bike stains are the Pitbull bike stains with the GP spools on them. So in order for me to install the end cap here, I will need to make sure the bike is lifted, and because I'll need to remove the spool, I need to keep the bike lifted. So if you have a kickstand, you might be able to do this with a kickstand. In my case, I have the side stands here that will hold the bike in place. I'll lower the bike and the rear set, or the pegs of the rear set, will be held in place by those stands, and it will keep my wheel higher up. So this way I'll be able to remove the end caps and replace them with the new end caps, and then I should be able after that to install the GP lifters. Let's get started. I'm going to remove the bike stain, and I'll just use the side stain to make sure that the bike stays up. I'm just going to make sure everything's lined up properly here, and I'm going to slowly lower this in place. Alright, so that looks good. So now I can put that bike stand away for now. So now that the bike is lifted and I have access to the end cap, I can simply loosen these up here, and in order to do so you'll need some 13mm wrenches. So I'm just going to loosen this up here, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. and you can fully remove both of these nuts, and there's a washer in there as well, so don't discard any of these parts because you'll need to reuse these two nuts and the washer as well with the new end cap. So this is number one here, and same thing on this side. If you remove these two nuts and the washer and the cap, so now I have all these parts removed, and again, do not discard these nuts and washer. So the next step is to open your package here, and there are some springs in there as well, and you will need to add the springs on that chain tensioner threaded rod here, and that will basically push the tensioner back and keep it at the right place. So what you want to do is insert that spring on there. So when you install that end cap, they are directional. So it means that you want this part here where your bolt will go in to hold the lifter. This part needs to be on the outside of the bike. So basically it will go in like this, and when you push this in here, you'll feel it clicking in place. So because it's captive, it's super tight to fit in there. What you want is use a hammer or a mallet, and if you're using a hammer or something that might scratch the surface, you might want to put some tape or a rag on top of it before you slam it or before you knock it in place. So here, I'm just gonna gently tap this into place. And here we go. So still a little gap here, so I'm gonna make sure there's no gap in there. And here we go. So now the end cap has been installed properly. What I want to do next is to remove this spool here. So in my case, to remove this, it's an internal X wrench that will be required. So this is a 5mm size here. Yours might be slightly different. Okay, so now that the end cap has been installed with the spring inside, obviously, the next step will be to install the bracket for the GP lifter, and that bracket will connect in the front to the area where the spool would normally be or was, and in the back you were given in that package a long bolt with a nut that will secure this bracket in place. And in my case, as I mentioned in the intro, I have these Delrin sliders that will go on top of this here and will offer some extra security. So you can see the thickness here of both items. So this is the Delrin slider that will simply go on top, and the bolt will hold everything in place. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to make sure that the writing is on the outside here. It might be a bit hard to see with the lights here. So this is what it's going to look like here. So you have the writing that will be facing out, and in order to put everything in place here, I'm going to simply take the longer nut and I'll insert it in the back here, and that should hold everything in place for now. I'm going to put this in here, and this is a tight squeeze here. You just need to put the nut in the back, and this is a nylock nut. And in the front there was some bolts that came with the package, so the shorter one will go in the front, and in my case I'm also gonna put a bit of blue Loctite on this bolt as well, just to make sure that it doesn't come loose. So one thing worth mentioning is that this Delrin slider is optional. You don't need to install it. It will work perfectly fine without that extra piece here. In my case, as I mentioned in the intro, I want to make sure that there's extra protection here so that if I ever have a low side, the majority of the impact should be absorbed by this Delrin slider and not that swing arm. Again, this is a personal preference. For me, that was a small investment to potentially save my swing arm. On the other side of the bike, obviously, you have your exhaust that's going to be there. So the exhaust will take the majority of the impact if you ever fall on the right side. But again, this piece is optional. And also be aware that when you install it, it's directional. So the writing here, you'll see the TST industry writing. That needs to go like on the outside, and this little bump here will go towards the back, and they are not the same on both sides. So obviously if you try to put it like this here, it's not going to be properly aligned with the top of your bracket or the GP lifter. So just make sure that when you install them, that this little bump here goes towards the back. So that's going to be going on the air side, and it will be flush with the top. And again, in order to secure this in place, I'm going to use my 4mm internal X wrench. And you will need here also a 10mm wrench to hold this little nylock nut in the back. And then by using your 4mm, you can simply screw this bolt in place here, and it should do the trick. All right, so this is nice and solid. And now after that, you can put the washer and your two nuts to complete the process on this side here. I'm not going to finish securing this in place right now, because my next step before I do the other side is that I want to remove the wheel and also install some captive spacers to make sure that nothing falls off when I remove the wheel. And on top of this, I will also be installing the Fast Frank Racing captive rear caliper bracket to make sure that when I'm doing a tire change or a wheel swap, that this bracket will also stay in place. So if you want more information about that process to install that captive rear caliper bracket, you can look at the description below, or I also add a link here at the top, somewhere on the right or the left there. All right, so the next step now is that I will remove the wheel, I will install the spacers, I am also going to change the sprocket, put a 415 sprocket. I will also replace these studs here with some titanium studs that are going to be a bit shorter so that it's easier to get the chain on. And after that, I will install the captive caliper bracket, and I will terminate the process by installing the captive chain tensioners on the other side as well. So I'm going to go off camera for the next little while. I'll finish all this work and I'll come back and I'll show you how it looks like to do the other side as well, which is going to be identical to this side. But if you want to see how it looks like as a finished product, I'll show that to you in the next few seconds. All right, so I'm back. It took me a little bit of time because I took the caliper apart, cleaned it up, made sure everything was okay. And now I'm ready to reinstall it. I've swapped my bracket with the bracket from Fast Frank Racing. I'm going to reinstall that caliper bracket and the caliper itself. And after that, I'll complete the installation process with the TST lifter and the back plate. So the first thing that I want to do now is reinstall that caliper. And if you've seen my previous video, I did a video on how to install that Fast Frank Racing caliper bracket. But basically what it does is that you have this chain adjuster, and there's two holes in it as well. So what happens is that you insert that unit or that chain adjuster into your swing arm, and those two holes here will line up with the two holes in that new caliper bracket, and you'll hold everything in place with these small bolts here, and that will ensure that your caliper stays in place when you're swapping the wheel. So this is one of the other things that you can do to simplify the process when you're changing the wheel. If you do this, obviously, you can look at my video and get more information on this, but I would also recommend to grind the brake pads as well. So now that the captive caliper bracket has been installed, I'm going to finish installing the captive chain adjuster on the right side of the bike. So first step, I'm going to insert the spring like we did earlier, and I'm going to push this forward just a little bit here so it's easier. And then after that, I'm going to insert that bracket. And keep in mind again, the part that's sticking out with the little hole at the bottom has to go on the outside of the swing arm or the bike. So just make sure everything is lined up properly. Take my little mallet here and just gently tap it. So this one was definitely a bit tight here. So the next step after that will be to mount the GP lifter bracket. And for this, as I did earlier, I'm going to put the Delrin protector on top of it, and I'm simply going to use the bolt that was supplied by TST, and the longer bolt will go in the back, and I'm going to put that little nut on right now. So this is again a nylock nut, so no need to put any Loctite on this one, but I will put a little bit of Loctite on the one that goes in front. And I'm sure you've noticed by now, this is a very easy thing to install. The reason why I like it so much, because it makes my life so much easier at the racetrack. And for the rear nut, I believe it was a 10 millimeter. Okay, so now this is installed, and I just want to make sure that I can slide my caliper bracket here properly. So yeah, so this is moving fine. And the next step is to put that washer and the two nuts back on. And again, I'm not going to readjust this right now. I'm going to mount the wheel first and readjust everything with the wheel after. All right, so now we are ready to mount the wheel again and make sure that everything is working properly. And after that, I'll adjust the chain tensioners. One thing that I'm going to change as well are the spacers. So these are the wheel spacers that come from Yamaha. I'm going to change them and replace them with the TST Captive spacers. So that little lip here will go under the bushing, and it will grab the bushing, therefore staying in place when you're trying to put the wheel, so that spacer won't keep falling, because of that little lip here will stay attached to that bushing. So same thing for the other side, same concept. You have this little lip on the side here, and I'll post a picture. I don't think the camera will catch it here because of lighting, but with this little lip, it will capture on that bushing as well, and everything will be nice and solid. Okay, so now I'm gonna install these captive spacers. I'm just gonna put a little bit of grease before I do so inside of that bushing here. And you don't need to put a lot, but I just normally like to have a little bit of grease there. It seals everything nicely, and It prevents the water from going in. So this is the spacer here, so they're not the same on both sides. So normally you just squeeze this in and push it in. It takes a bit of muscle, and when you hear it clicking like this, you know it's properly installed. I'm gonna wipe the extra grease here on the side, and this is nice and tight here. So now when I install this bushing or this spacer won't fall. And we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Put a little bit of grease in here, and I'm just pushing it under that seal or that bushing. I'm gonna wipe the extra here, and you can also see that I've just installed some new rotors and a new sprocket as well. So now I got new components with titanium fasteners. I'm going to remove that ABS ring shortly because I'm going to get rid of all the ABS components on the bike, because that's going to be a track only bike, so I definitely don't need the ABS. So for the spacer on this side, you will install the smaller diameter portion in the rim itself, or in the bushing. So same thing again, just push it in, you'll hear that little clip. I'm going to wipe the extra grease once more here, and we are now ready to install that wheel. So put it like this, and obviously I don't have the chain now because I'm going to replace the front sprocket and the chain as well. And I got my axle here. I'm going to just put a little bit of grease on this as well, just a thin layer of grease on this so that it glides in easily in the axle blocks. This is totally optional, obviously. You don't need to do this if you don't want to do this. Normally I like to clean it and then put a thin layer of grease. And the moment of truth now will be to insert this axle into the axle block and grab everything. So I'm going to adjust my axle blocks first, make sure they're aligned and the same distance on both sides. So I'm going to go with 2 lines. So I got 2 lines here, 2 lines and a bit. I'll do the same thing on the other side. So 1, 2 line and a bit, so that's good. So both sides are aligned properly. All right, so I got my pit bull wedge here. I'm gonna put this under a tire. Alright, so this is in place. I'm gonna lower this. Alright, so this is all set now. The last thing I want to do now, I'm gonna visually inspect everything. I've double checked these bolts that are holding everything in place. I'm not gonna retorque the axle just yet because I'm going to install the chain and a new sprocket in front. But what I want to do first though is see if my new pit bull stand will work properly with this. Okay, so this is the jack stand here. This is my pit bull jack stand, and I know it's hard to see because there's not a lot of room here, but the jack stands, or the wheel stands here, are slightly different. You can see here there's a little spool on the bracket on the stand, and that spool will go under that bracket here, and that's what's going to lift everything up. So you simply line it up. So now if I push up, I should be able to lift the bike, and I'll do this gently. Make sure that my side stands don't fall down. And here we go. Make sure it's on the table, line up properly. And here you go, guys. This is the process to install the TST Captive Chain Tensioners and the GP lifters. So super easy. It works super well, and now you can see the extra protection that it offers for your swing arm here. All right, folks, that was the process to install the Captive Chain Tensioners on your bike. As you saw, in order for this to be ideal, having the captive wheel spacers and the captive rear caliper bracket also makes the process a lot easier. All of this is totally optional. Obviously, it's not going to make an impact on the performance of the bike, but it will definitely help you out when you are in the pit and trying to change your wheels very quickly. So as a recap, the TST Captive Chain Tensioners come with the GP lifter, and you have the option to purchase the Delrin slider, and this will add a bit more protection to your swing arm. The other thing that I installed, again, that's totally optional, are the TST wheel spacers, and you can find those online from various vendors. I just happened to order everything from TST at the same time, and they have fast shipping, great service, so that's why I got everything from them. And my captive rear caliper bracket was purchased from I1 Moto, and as I mentioned previously, you can look at my previous video to see how to fully install that bracket on your R3. Everything I did today is going to be the same thing for the MT-03 as well. So if you own an MT-03 or an R3, the process will be identical on both bikes. So that's it for now. Hopefully that video was helpful. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please post them below or connect with me on social media. I'm always happy to hear your feedback. So if that video was helpful, please do me a favor, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, stay safe, ride safe, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.